Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today I want to tell you the story of my 2003 Ford Mustang Mach 1. I've had this car since 2010. It's very special to me, and I wanted to tell you the backstory of the car and everything like that. And something that makes this car very important is that my twin brother got a Mach 1 shortly after I did. We do everything together, and the cars are how we bond, and that's the case with a lot of people. That's why cars are so important to people. And so the story of this car kind of starts more when we were about 16 years old. We were told that we wouldn't have cars as teenagers, but then my sister seized the engine on my mom's Volvo, and in the meantime, they bought us a Mustang to share, which is a 1997 V6. It was only 4 years old at the time, and we were so excited to have this car, and it really meant so much to us. We got into Mustangs this way. We started researching the history on Mustangs, and we would share the car. I would drive somewhere, then my brother would drive back. We would gamble Mustang turns from each other and do all kinds of fun stuff. And as cool as it was that we got to share this car, my twin brother then found a duplicate of it in Chicago for half the price. And I don't know how, but we convinced our parents to fly back and get it. It had a bad clutch that they didn't tell us about. We drove it home and got it here. But we shared a lot of fun memories with these cars, twins with twin Mustangs. You can only imagine. And so one day, though, at college, this is the very day here, tragedy struck and I got T-boned. Justin was with me and it destroyed us. We were worried about the car. We'd had this car for years, and we got it home, and it was so nice on one side, and then this other side was just trash. So we started tearing into it, and I couldn't let the car go, so we got it back from the insurance. And I knew I couldn't fix the quarter panel, but I ordered a new axle and started going to work because it had bent the axle. And so we got a nice Ford Racing one with 373s already installed, got a door from eBay, and then took it to the body shop, and with the money that they sent, we were able to fix it. So I enjoyed this car for quite a while, but I always wanted a V8, and so that's when I found my first Mustang that I ever bought, which was my 2001 Mustang GT. And I learned a lot on this car. It needed a lot of work, from the intake manifold leaking to power steering links, all kinds of stuff. But eventually, we decided that we were going to sell this car, and it broke my heart. I did not want to sell it, but it was the right thing to do at the time. And if you check the link in the video description, I'll show you where I was able to get this car back after not having it for about another 10 years. So it was an amazing story, and so I'll put the link to that in the video description. So as hard as it was that I didn't have my Mustang GT anymore, my father-in-law actually found a Mustang, a 2000 GT, and he bought it, and he was kind of teasing me with it, I think, a little bit. And so he enjoyed it, and I was drooling all over it. And it was a nice car. It definitely had some history. You could tell it had been in an accident or something, but it was low mileage. It only had like 50,000 miles, had some C&L intake work done. And so it sounded amazing, and I loved driving it. And I was helping him fix some pinion seals and leaks on it and stuff like that. So I was enjoying that car. And it had an amazing Borla exhaust system on it. It's the older style that was kind of the casing looking mufflers rather than the newer ones that I now have on the Cobra. But, he wanted a Miata or something. And when I saw that this one was for sale, I was like, hey, get this one. It's a better value. And he had it for a while, but then eventually sold it. My brother and I would play pool at the apartment where he lived. And so that's why I like this picture in the background. You can kind of see we're living in apartment complexes at the time. And we would go down, and as we were playing pool, we would look at the pool balls, and we would say, that one's screaming yellow, that one's torch red, that one's sonic blue, as we'd name the colors. And so it was really cool. And we'd always talk about getting the next Mustang. What would the next Mustang be? Now, we lived right across the street from each other in the apartment complex. We were living a parallel life. We were both going to college, and I think the college, I'm going to blame college on this, is what did it to us. You're in class and you're so stressed out and you're doing everything, and you don't really want to be in class, so you start surfing the web a little bit. And so we were always looking for Mustangs, and all of a sudden I saw this ad that popped up. And so this was for a 2003 Ford Mustang Mach 1. And it said, very fast car with tons of aftermarket parts. Synchros are out of third and fourth. Besides that, the car is great shape. It's a 2003 Ford Mustang Mach 1. Some of the aftermarket parts are Slp X-Pipe, Slp Catback, Stage 3 spec clutch, Stage 3 spec flywheel, Alloy USA axle shafts, Excel coil packs, BBK 65mm throttle body, 1-inch spacer, and cold air intake, and much more. And didn't give a lot of pictures, but when I saw that and saw that it was only listed for $8,000, I was like, my goodness, that's less than I sold my GT for. And, granted, it needs a transmission, but anyway, I got really excited. Now, everything in life is a negotiation, and so in this case, I was able to convince my wife to let me get this car if I upgraded her ring. So that was something that she requested, and I kind of thought, well, there's nothing wrong with your ring, and then it's kind of like, well, there's nothing wrong with your cars either. So I had to understand that's what was important to her, and the Mach 1 was what was important to me, so we went ahead and did that. So Mach 1s were selling for about $18,000 at the time, so I thought I can still come out on top if I can do all the work myself. On the way, it was really cool. All of a sudden, we passed a blue Mach 1 as we were traveling up north, and this would later become my friend, but I hurried and took a picture of it just as I saw it coming. And so it was a 8-hour drive up there to Elko, Nevada. And so as we're driving up there, I'm going with Justin. We're getting pictures from the seller, and he's like, "Here it is." And I'm not going to give you the handheld tuner, so I need to put the other exhaust back on it. But so he's putting the stock mid pipe on it and sending us pictures along the way. And he's like, "Hey, I'm detailing it the whole time. It's going to be nice and clean for you when you get here." And so we were just so excited. And driving for 8 hours, thinking about it and talking about it, we were, had a lot on our mind. Now, I also had started work at like 4 in the morning that day, did a full shift, waited for Justin, got off, started going. So, this was a very long day by the time we got up to Elko, Nevada. So we finally made it there and decided to meet at the high school parking lot, and it seemed like an eternity waiting for him to come. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we just heard the most throaty, beautiful V8 that I've ever heard. Because the Mach 1, even with the stock H-pipe with the cats and the SLP loudmouth, sounds amazing. And he came thundering into the parking lot, and so he kind of sped up to us. And as he got close, though, all of a sudden my heart kind of sank. So he had described this car to us as perfect. He said it's flawless. It has one ding the size of a dime, right behind the passenger door, but that's about it. He said a doctor has owned this car for the first 78,000 miles, and then I got it, and it had 90,000 on it now. As we started looking at it, we're like, your idea of perfect is not the same as ours. It looked like somebody had stood point blank and taken a shotgun to the front hood. It had rock chips like crazy. We looked under it. The rear differential was leaking. We knew the transmission was bad, but, that was what it was. But then he decided to take us for a little test drive in it, and it sounded really good. I love the sound of the car, which was kind of persuading me. Like, it doesn't matter, just get it anyway. And a few things I remember as we're driving is I turned to him and said, "Hey, this sounds a lot like a Mustang Bullet that my friend used to have growing up." And he just looked at me and said, "This was Smoke a Bullet." And then I said, "Well, does it drive straight?" And I remember he just let go of the steering wheel, and he put both of his hands up and put his thumbs to his fingers and just kind of looked over at me like, didn't say a word, just looked at me like, "Yeah, it drives straight." And so we drove in and out through some trailer parks, and he was pointing out, and he said, "Hey, my friend has a '03 Terminator Cobra over here, a black convertible," and he was pointing out where some of his friends lived with awesome cars too. Now, he let me drive it, and being that it had a bad transmission, what you would have to do is rev it up and then wait for the RPMs to fall to 1100 RPM and then slide it into gear. And if you got good at it, you could actually drive the car. If not, it would just grind. And so he had broke the transmission because 500 miles away from home, his clutch went out and he was forcing it into gear to try to get it home. And so that's why the synchros were bad. And then the car sat, and it basically got a whole bunch of mineral water on it from being up in Nevada, just sitting outside. And that's where all the water spots came from. We took it over to a car wash, and I just swiped my card and just started scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing, and these hard water spots would not come off. And so I looked over, and my credit card had already gone up to $20 on the counter, and I was still scrubbing, and I felt bad because I'm kind of like, I'm cleaning this car right in front of him, yet he had told me he'd been detailing it all day. And so, I felt kind of awkward, but I was like, if I'm going to buy this car, I need to, see if I can at least clean it up. And so I was really giving it a full effort. The car was not in the shape that he said it was, and it was really hard for me. And so we said, okay, well, we'll catch up with you tomorrow. And so we went to the hotel, and I was just kind of like, man, talking to Justin, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And Justin's being supportive. He's like, come on, it's a Mach 1. You don't buy it, I will. This thing is, a beautiful car, and it sounds amazing. And I just said, yeah, but I can't make the wrong decision here. So I had Justin call him, pretending to be me, because I just was out of it for the long day, the long drive, everything. And Justin's like, hey, sorry, we already left town. We're not going to get it. And honestly, I felt really bad, and I tried to be a man of my word, so I didn't want to turn him down after telling him I was going to buy it, but it just wasn't adding up, and I thought I'd be, upside down in the car after fixing it. So as we went back towards Salt Lake City, we were frantically telling my little brother at home to start Googling and searching where we could find Mach 1s and try to at least maybe pick one up on the way home. And I mean, the best we were finding were like $14,000 for some that were really rough shape. This is some pictures of some of the ones we were looking at here. This was like an auto salvage one. This looks like a competition orange one. But at any rate, we didn't have any luck. And so I got home. I felt really bad. A few days later, I texted him, just said, hey, man, sorry again. I really wasn't trying to turn you down, but it just wasn't the condition that I was expecting. And we renegotiated, and he was like, well, how much you think? And I said, how about 6,500? And he was like, how about 68? And I was like, okay, let's do 68. I'll do it. I'll be there, and I'll get the car. Now, I was really trying not to get a loan for this, and I was in college and everything like that. I didn't even have a garage. I was going to rent a garage for my brother for it. And here's a list of everything that I summed up as the expenses. So obviously I didn't have all these items yet, but I would keep track of everything since I was going to college in an Excel spreadsheet, while I'm at the computer. And as you can see, in the end, this car did cost as much as if I would have found one that was already nice and new. And I think that's something that people need to take more into consideration as the seller. When they sell somebody a car, they usually say, well, it needs work, but, as soon as you spend this amount of money, you'll be good as new. But it's like, okay, spending the money, doing the labor, and, all that just to break even and be the same price as one that didn't require that work, there should be a little bit more negotiation in that, I think. The person who's having to go to all that trouble to fix the car up, if they want to do it as a hobby, okay, that's a fun project, but it shouldn't just break even to say, the car needs $5,000 worth of work done, not counting the labor, so the price is now $5,000 less. And so that's where it's hard with cars because, you will usually put money into them and in a lot of cases not get it out. And so even though $6,800 seemed like a really low price, that's where I had to be in order to break even with the car. So it was a financial thing. It wasn't me just trying to be rude. So I took the long 8-hour drive back up to Elko, Nevada, and I went with my wife this time, and we went in and we bought the car. And he wouldn't give me the handheld tuner, so that's why it had the stock H-pipe, but he did give me the X-pipe and put it in the trunk, so that was nice of him. And I went to town, immediately started cleaning it up. And in the glove box, I was happy that I found the original window sticker, which was cool. We stayed the night there that evening, and so I remember looking out the window several times, making sure that the car was still there. And on the way home, the car drove perfectly. I followed my wife's G35 here, and the car drove perfect other than grinding the gears when we had to be first and second and third gear. And so at this point I had just got the car there, and I was happy enough just to have it. I didn't have it fixed yet, and I was going to have to take some time to get some parts, but I was just happy enough to have it in my possession and ready to go. So I'd go up to the airport, which is where I kept it, and at this point I was just going up there to clean it up and try to get it back in shape. And so the worst thing was going to be those hard water spots, and I tried everything I could find online, Googled, and it said straight vinegar and clay bar and wax, all that, and nothing would work on it. I honestly was considering that I might have to repaint the car. And, it had this little scratch in the back bumper where he said he stopped and saw an elk on the road and he backed up to look at it and scraped it up. And, the engine bay was just filthy. But after several cans of degreaser, you can see how nice we made it look. And so the car did clean up well. And I finally found Mark V Splash. That's an acid. And so basically, you have to clean the car, put it on, and very quickly take it off. So I had removed the rear wing and everything and got the car ready for it. I put the acid on and it wiped right off. I was amazed. After everything I had tried, it actually worked. And so I was very happy about that. And the rags that we used had just turned to powder, within about half an hour afterwards, just because it's an acid. So within just a few weeks, it was really cool that my twin brother went and got an Azure Blue Mach 1. Also 2003, came out of Las Vegas, very clean car, good mileage. And so, in the end, we would end up paying about the same price for both of these cars after I put all the work into mine. The idea is that I, would have newer parts and everything like that, but his car definitely shows a little bit better when all is said and done. I had a C&L intake that was given to me as well with the car. It didn't fit mine with the throttle body, so we went ahead and just put it on his, and it kind of matched his a little bit better too. Here's some very old footage. This is recorded on a potato, as you can tell. But anyway, so he put the intake on. It was said not to need a tune, so that worked out. We needed a new front brake rotor. The other one was like cracked, and that was really hard to get off. It was kind of welded on there pretty good, but then we just started ordering and compiling all the parts, and finally we got the rebuilt transmission. And so it showed up and it looked really good. In the end, it would shift a little bit harder than I think it should, but we went to work. And this was one of our first times doing this. So, we didn't have write-ups, and I didn't have Danny Johnson's videos to go off of yet because they weren't made. And, this is why I made the install videos, because doing all this took a lot of time. And I was very grateful for someone on the Mach 1 registry who helped work with me. And because there were 2 bolts in the front of the dust shield that would not come out. The manual didn't tell me to take them out. So I couldn't figure out why the transmission wouldn't separate from the engine. Finally, someone was nice enough to talk me through it, and I found myself doing the same thing. And so that's kind of where my YouTube videos were born. I said, next time that I do a repair like this, I'm just going to make a video so I can show that to people and they can see it. And so that's where the videos came from, and that's why the channel exists. So we can kind of thank the Mach 1 for part of this. And so I got the spec flywheel with the new insert. Instead of having the flywheel machine, you actually just buy a new insert and put it in. There were a few small complications, like the hardware being different sizes, and so when you put them in, they were kind of sticking out and made me worry a little bit. And I got kind of a run-of-the-mill clutch, and when I got it in, I just wasn't sure about it, if it would work or not, and the input shaft alignment tool that they gave me didn't fit, so I got real nervous and I returned it. So the car was kind of sitting there dead in the water until I decided to go with a center force clutch, and I really like the pedal feel on this, and it had 700 foot-pounds of clamping force. I later would take off these counterweights. I made another video about that. But anyway, I was also researching getting the Ford Racing release bearing and doing everything the best that I could in the right way. I also ordered the clutch alignment tool as it was from Center Force, and it fit perfectly, so that worked well. And so got everything back together, got some friends back together with me to help lift the transmission back on. And I was considering doing the rear main seal at the time, but it wasn't leaking, and so I didn't touch it. They can be a little bit finicky, but pounded out the old pilot bearing and pressed in the new one here, tapped it in, put the new flywheel back up on there, lined everything up, and it just came out really nice. It looked really good. So now it was time to lift up the new rebuilt transmission, and again, it came out okay, but it shifts a little harder than I would like it to. But we wheeled that in there, and we learned some things along the way. My brother was like, hey, why don't we fill it full of transmission fluid first so it's not so hard when we get it up in there? And so we did, and it spilled out on us. And so we learned some things the hard way, but we got that transmission back up in there, and that was just a huge success. And so now that we had it in place, we decided to put on the SLP X-Pipe that came with the car. And so starting the car up for the first time, I did all my research on it, but it did well. But now we had to go into the rear end because it was leaking. And so I went and drained it and then saw that it was also leaking from the front pinion seal. And so we gave it a full fluid change anyway, since I wanted to do that. So we took the cover off and cleaned it all out and then went towards the front. Now, according to the manual, all it said was to count the number of threads and the position where the pinion comes off on the front. Now I have a full install video on this now with the correct information and using a new pinion nut and red Loctite, all of which the manual did not mention. And so after everything that I had done, unfortunately, the pinion nut came off not long after, and the pinion actually ate into the traction lock. So that was a hard lesson that I learned, but on the other hand, I've made good videos that now show the proper process of doing it. And so hopefully other people won't make that same mistake. But that was a little disappointing because I finally got the car up and running and ready to go. And, then that pinion seal thing happened. So as I was driving, I got some kind of little vibration and I was like, uh-oh, is it the transmission or what is it? And I found out that the pinion nut had come loose. So at that point, I really wasn't sure. I hadn't done any gear installs or anything yet. So, it had a huge amount of metal shavings here. So I just took it to a shop. I ordered new 355s and just had them install it. Later, I would build the rear end, and I have install videos on that for the 410s, and you'll see that a little bit later in the video. But after I got that addressed, it was time to correct the hood. So I took it to a nearby auto body shop who had done good work. They fixed the Mustang that you saw wrecked in the front in the beginning of the video. And so I'd go check up on the car, and it'd be sitting there with no hood on it as they're working on it. And so it looked pretty cool anyway, just to see the shaker and everything. So I was excited that the car would be coming together, and they wanted to repaint the whole car. And of course, I said I can only do the hood, and it was still like $660 or something like that, almost $700. And the Mach 1 hood looked awesome when they were done with it. And it looked naked because of the way the Mach 1 hood looks without the stripe, but it still looked really cool to have almost like, it would rise up and then rise up again and then, have the shaker. So I loved the look. I hit 500 miles for the clutch break-in. So, there was quite a bit of clutch chatter as I was driving the car around. And that's normal with a dual friction clutch like that. And so, I was trying to wear it in and get the 500 miles on it and do everything that I was supposed to do to make sure it wore in. And it started coming out pretty good. And so then we started taking the car to car shows, and we had a lot of fun with that. I put the Cobra R wheels on it from my V6 Mustang, and it looked really nice. So at this point, I was really enjoying the car. I was driving it to work as much as I could and really enjoying just having it there. I would go out on my breaks, and it was a motivation for me. It really gave me a lot of strength to do everything that I needed to do to get through college. I was doing a full-time job, then night classes, online classes, and, just really trying to have some fun with the car as much as I could. And looking back, I was very lucky. These cars are built very well, and so if they've been good on oil and haven't been completely abused, they last a long time. So luckily, mine was mainly just cosmetic after I got that transmission fixed, and from there, it ran perfectly fine for me, and it hasn't given me really any trouble whatsoever. And so I've enjoyed some of the Auto Art Mach 1 collection cars for it too. And I basically moved into a garage that my brother had at his apartment. He would go in and rent it, and I'd just pay him the money for it. And this is where I was doing oil changes, installing the clutch quadrant and the firewall adjuster and everything like that. And the one that I got for the Mach 1 after a lot of research was the Fiore brand. And it was really nice. You could see the hook on it was just a little bit different than the Steeda. I tried the double hook Steeda one with Steeda's cable, and it was no good. When I went back to a Ford cable, that did the trick. So now that the hood had cured for a few months, I was ready to put on the decal. This was a very hard thing. So I actually went through 3 of these decals. And so I trimmed them the best that I could, and got them all cut out. These were from American Muscle, so they actually came in a gloss black instead of the matte black that the Mach 1 should have had. So that's what they had at the time. And so I cut them all out, and I really wanted to make them perfect. So my brother doesn't even know until he watches this video probably. I went to his car and taped it off and tried to get out some measurements on my car to see where the hood stripe was supposed to go and lined it up. And in the end, the best way to line it up was just with my fingers at the top. Now, as I put this all the way down to the bottom, it lifted and it destroyed that decal at the bottom left, you can see. And the pinstripe lifted too, so I had to get a second one. I did that again, the whole process, and then halfway down, I was pulling the backing, and it all turned to bubbles. So the third time was the charm. I worked this decal for about 4 hours straight. I let it cure overnight, and it peeled off perfectly. I had a little perforation for the water to drain between the main stripe and the pinstripe, and this came out incredible. There were no bubbles, no problems, and I was thrilled. So I also got a new chin spoiler because the one that he had, as you can see on the driver's side corner, was kind of dimpled there from him hitting the curb, and I just wanted the car to look nice. And so this is how it turned out, and I was thrilled. It looked really good. I had it now in this nice little garage so that it was out of the weather. And that was my main criteria for the car. I didn't want to have it unless I had a garage for it. So renting one from my brother was very helpful. I collected all the auto arts of every color that they made. I went and had the car tinted, which was nice. It really needed it. And I was the kind of person kind of watching everything they did with it. My brother at the time was moving into his first house, as was I, so that was really important for us. We met friends who had Mach 1s, and we went back to the high school, which was a lot of fun, and they let us in there, and we were kind of playing around with both of the cars. So it was fun to go back to high school and see these cars that we saw when we were in high school, brand new in the showroom, and now we owned them, and we just got to play around with swapping some tread over for the wheels. And Justin just put his car up and just kept detailing it because it was perfect. Didn't have any problems with any clutch adjustment or anything like mine. And so anyway, it was really cool and nostalgic to be able to bring these back into the high school where we would have just died to have these cars during high school. And we loved our 97 Mustang V6s as well, and we were grateful to have them. But it just being able to go over to the Ford dealership and see these cars new and now own them was just awesome for us. So it was a very cool thing. Justin and I spent a lot of time in auto shop together. We had the same classes, and it was kind of like a just free for all. There wasn't really much instruction, so we just kind of were always out tinkering with the cars. And so that's kind of where we just learned, was kind of teaching ourselves and doing some projects and some things. And we had to have the shop teacher come out and show us again how to balance the tires. But put some HID headlights in it, and at the time I was actually helping manage the student housing. And so that's what my wife was doing, and I would help her with it. And so it was kind of cool to have our car up here with all the other college kids in their cars. But luckily I could go take mine across the street and put it in a garage, and just have our meetups with our other friends with the Mach 1s like we were talking about. And I got little things like little key fobs, and then people at work who needed help, now I was able to help them. I helped my friend here with his Fox body with his transmission, and my other friend, my brother-in-law, had some Z28s and some other cars that fit right in, so we had a lot of fun cruising. And we were just so proud to have these Mach 1s. And some of our other friends also had, some LS1s, and we'd make friends like this. We'd see this one, for example. This was a friend that we made just by going over and talking to him, and enjoying the car around, the holidays was a lot of fun too.